Hi all and welcome. My name is Waldemar from Better Your Chess, and it's time to play another rated rapid game. So the time control will be 50 minutes per side, increment in seconds 10. We'll play rated with the widest possible rating range. So let's issue a challenge. Here we go. Let's see who will pick up our challenge. Gepo1403, welcome. Strong player. Let's see. 22 seconds left to play. Okay. D4, knight f6. So, will he play a London system? Yes, he will play a London system. Will I try and play King's Indian setup against it? Or will we try and play something more regular? I think I'm going to go with something more classical. D5. I've got some ideas of how I can tackle this London system. It all depends, of course, on how he will play. So, yeah. He has brought his bishop outside the pawn chain. Now he's trying to finish his pawn triangle with pawns on e3, d4, and c3. And one way to try and make use of the fact that white has developed the bishop early on to f4 is that sometimes the bishop on f4 is a target, and also the dark squares on the queen side, most notably the pawn on b2. Okay. I'm still learning how to make colors on Lichess. Gepo1403, thinking. Well, for a minute already. This means that maybe he's not so well at home in the London system. Could be, of course. I mean, if he would be a well-versed London system player, he might just bang out his moves. So my next move is going to be knight c6. And then, depending on what he will play, maybe e6 or queen b6 or bishop f5. There are many possibilities there. c3 he has played. Yeah, okay, so let me just finish this basic setup with the two pawns and the two knights in the center there. This is interesting. He has not developed his knights, but he has put his bishop now on a vulnerable square. So, I mean to say it's vulnerable to a c5, c4 push. So I'm gonna go, I think, with queen b6. Because then if he plays the regular defense against this outing with queen b3, then I can fork him with c5, c4. He will then be forced to exchange queens on b6 and then lose a tempo with the bishop on d3, which I can use to go b6, b5, b4, and so on. So I'm guessing that he will not do that. Well, then there's also, queen c1, for instance. But still his bishop on d3 is now unprotected. But that doesn't really matter much, right? I would like to put the rook on c8, so as to harass his queen on the c file. But there are other ideas here as well, of course. So how should I play from here on? It's a little bit difficult. What if I take on d4? I think it's still a little bit too early. It's actually quite interesting. He takes on d4 and recaptures. Knight takes d4 there. Then pawn takes d4 and then queen d4. And I would be hitting both bishops, but I'm pretty sure that there must be some way of playing for white, like I'm actually not hitting both bishops because the queen on c1 is protecting f4, so that's a bit of a silly idea. I also have some trouble developing the bishop to its ideal square, right? Which is f5. So I can go e6 or maybe bishop g4, but I'm also looking at what I think is quite interesting, namely knight h5, to try and just simply win that dark square bishop. That looks interesting. So knight h5, bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3, and I take that bishop, and then I suppose that bishop is mine, right? But it's risky somehow. E6 is the solid move, and I'm thinking now way too long already, so I've lost my advantage on the clock. And I cannot really make up my mind. I can't make up my mind. It looks interesting though. Why don't we just try it? I don't see any danger, any immediate danger involved in that. So knight h5. Let's see what happens here. So the threat is to take. Also, excuse me, the defender of d4 would be lured away to f4. Yeah. So it definitely depends on how he is going to react now. But there's a lot for him to think about as well, I guess. Now that bishop might sneak away to h4. I think it's pretty healthy to try and snap it off immediately and not think about anything else. Yeah, so now the big question, of course, should we play g6 or h6? That again is a difficult question. If I play g6, I'm also preparing to bring my bishop to the long diagonal, which I somehow like, because then sooner or later I would definitely be threatening to play e5. I think I'm quite safe there. g6, the knight will go to f3, bishop g7, and then let's say knight g5. Knight g5, yeah. Since he still has the light squared pieces, I think I'm gonna go with g6. Then of course there is the question if he still is really threatening to take on h7. Not yet. But let me blunt that opportunity before it's too late. Let me go with this, g6. I think I sort of like it. But I'm taking a little bit too long, you know. I'll spend more than 4 minutes on my first 8 moves, and I'm already sort of, how to say, I'm already sort of improvising. Now, we understand why he plays this. He wants to block any future e7, e5s from me. But I guess that I'm probably going to be able to play it anyway with f6 and e5. What I also don't like for white is that he has now weakened those squares, but I don't see a way to make immediate use of that. I think I'll just develop. Okay, so what does he want to do? Probably knight f3, yeah? Knight f3 is going to be his move. And then the question is, will I castle into it or not? It might be very dangerous. Okay, now for the moment e3 is completely unprotected. Can I make use of it? I'm constantly trying to capture on d4. If I capture on d4, I get no less than three pawns for the piece, right? So let's take, yeah. Because the problem, I'm threatening to take on b2 as well after that. It looks very interesting, but it might just not be sufficient. But if I want to do it, I think I should be doing it now, because otherwise knight f3 is coming, and then he will be overprotecting d4. So let's take on d4, let's say e or c takes d4, then knight takes d4, the pawn takes on d4, and the queen takes on d4. Now one natural move there is knight f3, but I will take yet a fourth pawn on b4. So I'm guessing he's going to protect b2, but how, huh? With rook b1, then I'm hitting also the bishop. So it looks extremely good. Let me take, and let's see what happens. It might just be very interesting. Dark squares, dark squares, dark squares. Yeah, it would be better for me, I see now. If I take again, then there's always this. Yeah, bishop b5 check. That's nasty. That's nasty. And then if he defends b2, let's say bishop b5 check. He defends b2. King f8, he defends b2. There is a check. I can also just go bishop d7 there. If he takes, I'll just recapture that. And then I'm threatening, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. I'm threatening rook c8, you know, both of my rooks are connected in that line. And it does not appear that he can harm. Well, if I castle now, then it's just, I'm not in time. So I'm just going to, you know, as they say, I'm going to wing it. Knight d4. This is just interesting not to try, huh? There is, by the way, also bishop d4, which is maybe stronger. Then I'm preventing. Then I'm just simply preventing bishop b5 check. But there's something appealing about queen d4. So bishop d4, knight f3, because I'm hitting the knight as well, knight f3. Yeah, knight f3 and then bishop b2, huh? Yeah, it's difficult. So what's the best move? And why am I down on the clock so much? What's the best move? I don't think I can allow bishop b5. Queen d4. Bishop b5 check. Bishop d7. Then knight f3, queen e3 takes the bishop, so bishop takes d7. King d7, knight f3. There is this check on e3, but I don't know that it will give me much. So the idea is to go queen b2. Queen b2, bishop b2. Knight e5 check. The bishop takes that and the pawn recaptures. And then that structure, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know about that structure. Well, there's not a lot of time anymore. So bishop d4, knight f3, bishop takes on b2. And then what can he do there? Queen b1, I'm thinking. Yeah, but then at least I get the exchange as well, right? Bishop d4, knight f3, bishop b2. So I think I'm gonna go with this one. Let's try that. Not sure if I calculated that correctly. But there is a target on g1 and there is a target on b2. So I'm guessing this is actually quite correct. But why does it take me so long, guys? It takes me so long to figure all this out, huh? Not really warmed up. He's only invested 3 minutes. I've already invested 12 minutes. If this position is better, how on earth am I going to win it in 3 minutes? That's just, it's sort of pathetic. Yeah. Why do I realize only after 5 minutes that taking on b2 is not just a pawn, it's an exchange, and that's why I should take on b2 with the bishop and never with the queen? That somehow didn't click. Yeah. It's a pity. There's something else that is really quite nice, that once I've taken the rook on a1, there might be a check on e3, hitting the king and the bishop. Depending on where he puts his queen, it's either queen e2, which is a double defense, or bishop e2, which is a double defense. Yeah. Another problem, of course, if he recaptures on a1, he's hitting my rook in the corner. But there again, I could answer with a check, and or f6, and or just castles. But of course I should be very careful that there's not some sort of mating combination with the rook on h1 lurking in the background, the queen on a1 lurking in the background, and his knight from f3 jumping to g5, for instance. But I have a feeling that there are sufficient resources there. What's also important is that his knight on d2 is not impressive because it's hemmed in by my pawn on d5. Well, I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best, but I'll have to play very quickly now. So in his time, I need to think what he's going to do. So are there any moves that I missed somehow? It is quite nice that I'm getting 3 pawns, yeah? But the remaining pawn structure is not yet so impressive because it's 2 versus 1 on the queen side, and I'm still far away from creating a pass pawn there. And the block in the center is nice, but you know, he also still has some king side pawns, so they don't move forward easily with a knight on f3, you know, both my g and e pawns, for instance, are impeded. So it will definitely have to be a very long-term idea that I will be up 3 pawns. But hopefully I'm adding an exchange to the balance there as well, which makes it better, all the better. Still, I'm not sure about this idea. You know, it might have been just too, I won't say too easy, too early is what I want to say. But this was the moment to do it, because otherwise knight f3 would overprotect d4, and yeah, no fun in the position left, huh? This is why I tried to gain the dark squared bishop, because now you can see that I'm crashing through on those dark squares. So I'm still expecting knight f3. Yeah, what else is there, right? The queen on c1 is also awkwardly placed. That's one of the advantages of playing queen b6, of course. But no more knights left, so it will definitely have to be a very long-term thingy. And in the middle game, you know, he still has a bishop and a knight, and they can make nasty jumps to my king. So if somehow I can maybe also exchange the queens, I think I should be happy doing that, because then there will be no more danger lurking to my king. Okay, I don't know if I should, well, I should not give the check on f2 because I want to take on b2, of course. He took a very long time analyzing that. Why did he not go to f3, which was a much more aggressive square? Now it's not so easy for him to block the long square diagonal, the dark square diagonal. Also, if my queen goes to e3, it's not with check, but I'm hitting the bishop and the pawn on g3 and pinning the knight on e2, so it's really in his face there. Of course, I will have to time that very well. Now, I think he can make a mistake with rook b1. I'll take his queen, he take my queen, and then I have this check in between on d2, and I also pick up the rook on b6. So that would be exchange and the number of pawns. Now he wants to play rook b1, but of course he's going to recapture now. Now he's hitting my rook. I don't want to make such an ugly move as something like e6, yeah? I think I'm gonna have to go with castles and then just hope for the best, basically, you know? Develop with bishop g4, queen e3, bring my rooks to the c-file and just stave off the attack. I don't see any other move. There is queen f6, but that seriously ruins my structure. He could take that, and then I definitely favor white's chances in that queenless middle game. So I need to keep my pawn structure intact. And let's just see what happens. Yeah, he might bring a knight to g4, but that's not so easy if he brings the knight to g4. How about queen e5? Huh? Queen e5 is nasty. Yeah, I think queen e5 is a very nasty move. But then there's queen e6, for instance. Queen e6 is maybe not so bad there. Yeah. Okay, he has a lot of activity trained at my light squares, you know. If this guy comes here, I will have to be very very careful, of course. I definitely want to develop. Yeah, I want to develop. But now my queen e3 move is possible, right? I'm not sure I'm liking bishop g4, for instance, because then knight e5 hits that bishop. I could take on e2, but I think I prefer to win the tempo against the bishop here. This must be the correct move, queen e3. I also don't have a lot of time to think about it, right? And then I'm already liking my bishop g4 move better. Maybe queen b1 is a try. I don't see how I'm getting my rooks involved yet. That's also a bit of a problem, but my queen is in his face. That's for sure. Yeah, moves like f7, f6, you know, to take away some dark squares are really weakening my light squares. What I also like about bishop g4 is once the knight on f3 moves, I can take on e2, which is the defender of the g3 pawn. Then I can take on g3 with check, and who knows, even on f4. And then still my rooks are not really playing, but with my armada of pawns, I might just be able to make something happen. Also, if I take on e3, I would be luring the bishop away to e2, and then the bishop does not take a very aggressive stance anymore. Also, bishop g4 simply threatens to take 2 times on f3, so that's also good. And of course, it just frees up the c-file, yeah? So if there's a rook on c8 and the knight on e2 is somehow eliminated, then there's always this horrible threat of rook c1 winning white's queen. Yeah. So, are we threatening any discoveries? Well, I think, again, this just has... I mean, is he threatening any sacks? Maybe rook h7, but I don't even have to take that if I want to. I think this has to be the move. So now he has he promoted his queen, or has he demoted his queen by putting it from the dark square on the light square and functioning for the moment basically only as a bishop, as a diagonal piece. But look at the time, you know, he's really catching up. And rook c8 sometimes threatens rook c1, but it also threatens rook c3 hitting the bishop, or maybe even rook c6 overprotecting g6. Of course I would be vulnerable left, right and center. Yeah, I think a very important motif is that bishop e2 forces bishop d2, excuse me, bishop e2, and then the bishop can no longer sacrifice itself on g6. Wow. I mean, what is that? Wow. That looks to be looks like a strong move to me. Or is it? Well, I have to go with my instinct somehow. Because there's not a lot of time to calculate all of this, yeah? The thing is, if he takes on g6, I might just recapture with my f-pawn, which would open up the f-file. Yeah. Well, for sure he is scaring me. There is g5, yeah, that's interesting. There is g5, and then if he pushes f6, I might be in a spot of trouble. Yeah, so I'm in trouble. I am afraid I'm going to lose this game because of time. But I might just... I take on f3? Yeah, why don't I take on f3? Hitting the rook in between, and then maybe... Yeah, there's just no time. That's the big problem. There's just no time to calculate this. This is problematic. I want also to go king g7. If he takes, I take with the pawn. Yeah, my rooks are not playing. That's the big problem. My rooks are not playing. I'm afraid, guys, I'm going to lose this game because of time. That's a big problem. But king g7 is still there. Rook h7, king takes, pawn takes check. Pawn takes g6, bishop takes g6. That's nothing much. Again, I could, at the very least, just pick up the queen, you know, queen h1, that is to say, exchange queens. Okay, now he no longer has any control on the on the H file. I'm also overprotecting G6 now. Yeah, okay. I think I'll have to go with this move. And again, C1 is lurking, F4 is lurking, G3 is lurking. I think E5 is maybe a strong move. Because if he takes that en passant, I get to open up the F file. Yeah, that would be very nice. That would be very nice. So E5 is definitely a try. But he might just play this move again. So what's the idea here? I'm still defended. Let's go here. I want to play E5, E4. I don't quite see what his threat is. I'm also blocking out the knight now. Yeah. Okay, so this is F file stuff now, hopefully. Or did I make a horrible mistake by opening up that diagonal? I made a horrible mistake by opening up that diagonal, I'm afraid. What to do, what to do, what to do? Do I have any checks? D5 is hanging. I have... Oh... Yeah, that was just a horrible blunder. He's also hitting H7. Is there not a double? A double, guys. Is there not a double? I don't see it. Okay, I'm going to lose on time. I made a horrible mistake with taking with the F pawn. That was just probably a horrible mistake. Minus 19? Okay, guys, let's analyze. Yeah, I have myself to blame if I play so horribly slow. Let's just immediately take a look at this line. I'm just winning here, and I make the horrible mistake. Yeah, I could push my H pawn. For a moment there, I was so happy to open the F file for my rook, but that's only an abstract idea. The concrete idea there was Queen B7. Oh, look at that. Look at my conception. My conception was absolutely fine. But, you know, it happens so often. I am a strong chess player, but I always break down somewhere. I make a horrible mistake. That really hurts. It really does hurt. I mean, this is just a winning position, more or less. Minus 3 point something. Yeah. Look at my center. Yeah, I'm going to play E5, E4, kick his pieces away, huh? That's a real pity, but congratulations to Geppo1403. Yeah, well, okay, so, well, it was black all the way, maybe? So let's take a look at... Oh, I made a horrible mistake here as well. He said I should go back to E3, so Queen G4 was already not very good. But, so let's see, I made 2 blunders and 1 mistake. So let's go there and see what happens. Bishop takes F3. Already he likes my position so much, but he doesn't like me taking. That was just an instinctive move for sure. But I didn't have any time to calculate anything else. You know, he's not coming with knight jumps because he has played F4, F5. So knight G5 and E5 are not threatening. So that means that, well, again, E5 is a try. E5 for 1 is a try. But also Rook C8 is a try. Yeah, Rook C8 was possible. Okay. Well, yeah, so I made more mistakes than that. Queen G4, he says, just go back. Then you have at least the ideal in his face position, so to say. And then f takes, yeah, okay, the horrible blunder at the end there should have been replaced with h takes g6. So again, it feels like a time issue, when I was just playing on instinct. Too much on instinct, huh? On impulse, not having the peace and quiet in the time to take a little bit of a deeper look. Yeah, that's a pity. So let's just go from the beginning there for a moment. Okay, d4, knight f6. This is all known, I suppose. This move I don't know. I think it's more common to first develop a knight. Knight to d2 or the knight to f3. Queen b6 he likes. Queen c1. He definitely likes black now. So I'm choosing one of those plans. The plan of knight h5, which for the moment is the third choice of the computer. He is suggesting that maybe you can try and become active on those dark squares a little bit more immediately. Now the normal reply is this. And then there is this funny move, I want to say. So what happens if he just takes that? It has to do probably with this file opening up. And everything, you know, is sort of awkward at the moment. This is a very important trick to try and remember. Knight g4. Yeah, if the bishop drops back to g3, then there's, for instance, knight e5, bishop c5. It's also about very fast development. Aha, that's the idea. But the top computer line here is not bishop g3, but maybe to improve the queen then after all with queen here. And then, yeah, you're hitting the bishop on d3. So black can play even sharper, even more aggressively there. This is interesting. This already promises black quite a significant advantage. -1 point something. Okay, so after queen c1 I went with the other idea. Less insisting. Bishop g3. Yeah, probably he just has to do the exchange on his terms, for instance with knight e2, because then if I take on f4, at least I'm pulling his knight forward to the center and he would be hitting d5. Of course my position would be fine. And the other try with bishop g5, we don't like too much. I was gonna go h6, that's for sure, and then here again, he's suggesting stuff like e5, but g5 I think would have been my try. And then I would have played this position. If he takes like this, I would have gone bishop g7, I think. e5 immediately is also possible. So if I can, that would be quite nice. But he went to g3, so I took. Then he opens up there, of course. I forgot that I can play e5 here immediately, so g6 is weaker. That is also so weird. I want to play e5, here's the opportunity, I don't play it. And I had already realized that the capture on h7 is not a problem. Of course it's not a problem if he does so with the bishop, because then the bishop would be horribly pinned against the rook on h1, but also the other way around. I don't think it's very good. If nothing else, I can play g6, trapping the bishop, but also d4 is hanging no less than 4 times. So this would just be plain bad. So it was not at all a very good game. I should play more insisting moves, you know, faster moves, aggressive moves. So g6 is still promising me some advantage, but now he just clamps. So bishop g7, and now this knight d2. And here the interesting try. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were also normal moves. He sort of likes black, but I went for it. So after some time, the computer likes it, -1.5. Okay, here we go. Yes, it's still the top move, and of course, if For some reason, I had immediately realized that bishop takes d4 is, of course, the best move. Then I would have saved some 5 minutes and not blundered at the end there. Weird. Okay, so what did he play? Knight e2. That is the top, well, one of the top choices. So bishop here, queen takes, and castles. And I do have the advantage, yeah. So I was most afraid of maybe queen into e5. Let's see, how does he evaluate that? Still bishop g4 and not afraid of queen takes e7 because I would immediately, yeah, I would just immediately take over on the e file, huh? So that would be quite alright for me. So in the game he played this move. It was not necessary to go in with the queen immediately. He says bishop g4. Well, it's not a bad move, I suppose. But if you have the opportunity, sorry guys, I'm letting it slip here. This was the moment. Bishop g4. Yeah, I was afraid that he would kick my bishop with something like this, yeah, knight e5. Yes, I can take. Okay, probably he wants to take with the king, keep the bishop on the aggressive diagonal. And now f6, wow, that's a very difficult move to play. Very difficult move because it seriously weakens the light squares, but maybe it's fine. Maybe it is just fine, but then you have to calculate. f6, that's such a computery move, huh? Knight g4. But still, oh, e5. e5? And then if he takes, maybe you pin. Yeah, you have some double hits here. Okay, well that is really high school chess, guys. Really high school chess. So let's go back there. I played queen e3, not bad. So yeah, I wasn't sure about queen e1 because he's sort of demoting his queen, I feel. Maybe queen e1 would have been better, but at least we play an endgame with some chances for black there. So this move he doesn't like. So now I get to develop, and he plays this. For a moment there I thought I have to take the knight before the knight jumps, but now the knight no longer has any support from the pawn, so it can't jump. So then of course rook c8 is better. Absolutely. So I didn't consider my alternatives there. It's just a way of thinking, you know, that the stronger chess player does, and I fail regularly. Okay, so takes. Still there is some advantage here. Yeah, he likes me taking. And then this move. So now queen g4. I liked overprotecting g6. That was the reason. And but he says, how about this? But what happens if we do this? Now I take with this guy, because if he plays this, I have this check in between. Yeah. Okay, this is not the end of the story probably, but of course with a check I bring in the guys. And it looks like a winning attack now. Yeah. Well, there's just not even a perpetual, because I'm controlling. That's the big deal. I'm controlling h6. So just some sort of a consolidating move, and black's just winning here. Okay, so that's why queen e3 was better. That was also quite difficult to calculate. Queen g4, rook f4. Okay, going back to g5 makes perfect sense. Now he goes back to the h file. That's also a bit weird. I think my conception in this game was better, but yeah, who cares about f? Even e5 he likes a lot. Then he takes, and I made this horrible blunder. Yeah. I could have tried h5, but he takes on d5 with check, and I had about 10 seconds left, and I can play on the increment, but I decided to let it run down this time. Maybe also not very good, huh? Lack of fighting spirit. I mean, after h7 I can just play on. Check. King goes. It's still a game. Still a game. Equal. Yeah. Okay, guys. That's it. Thanks for your attention. And you know, if you like this video, please SLC, subscribe, like, or comment. Bye.